Good Thursday morning, everyone, and welcome to the Art of Inspired Selling. My name is Catherine Nunez, and I'm the host of the show. I have scoured LinkedIn and the internet to bring people to you that are not just surviving, but they're thriving in the new normal. They could be a speaker, a coach, a motivational speaker, but they have something to deliver to you, the audience, that will help you implement something in your business today so that you can just thrive in the new normal. Now, Wednesdays are my normal time for the live show. And yesterday I had the privilege to spend the day judging the 2021 Women in Sales Field Competition. Can I just say, congratulations to all the women that were nominated for this prestigious award. You guys are rocking it. You're changing lives, you're blazing trails, and you're making a difference to the lives of your family and also to the shareholders that you're accountable to in your businesses. So keep up the great work. Let me know if I can support you. And any companies out there that have women that you want to support, that you want to lift up, if you have women in sales programs, I encourage you to check out the WISA program. You can find us on LinkedIn. We were all over LinkedIn yesterday, or send me a message and I'll be happy to direct you over to Affy, who directs that out of the UK. So once again, thanks everyone for showing up. And today we are so lucky to have Coach Jim Johnson on the show. So as you know, I'm a consultant and I teach people how to brand themselves, show up on personal or on social media, and use that personal brand as a client magnet through social selling on platforms like LinkedIn. So I have a 12-week program where I work one-on-one with people and I do some other consulting. And part of what we do when people work with me is we talk about their personal mission statement, about their values, and why it is they want to get up in the morning, like what drives them. What I ask people every time on this show is, what gets you up in the morning? I find that successful leaders today do more than just wake up and get on the hamster wheel of life. They have a mission, they have values, and they have a life plan that they stick to. You can change it, but they have a roadmap to begin with so that every day they don't get up out of bed, they spring up out of bed and they make it happen. So today I'm going to read the bio for my guest, Coach Jim Johnson, who made his debut on TV in 2006 through a decision. I'm going to read this so that I don't mess up. In 2006, a decision based on kindness during a high school basketball game turned Coach Jim Johnson into national news celebrity and an authority on this subject of making dreams come true. Now, in his presentations around the country, Coach, as he's so affectionately called, emphasizes the importance of teamwork, sportsmanship, and leadership. The same concepts that helped him develop winning high school basketball teams for more than 30 years. Coach has appeared on Oprah, Good Morning America, ESPN, and dozens of national TV and radio shows. In 2011, he released his first book, A Coach and a Miracle, Life Lessons from a Man Who Believed in an Autistic Boy. And all of you will, now we have to check with him, but it does say on this that all of you will be receiving a copy. And as we know, a coach is someone that has an opportunity to mold the children that they are engaged with. That 1 second in time, that 2006 event, maybe put him on the map nationally, but what he's done for other children and for families goes much, much deeper than that. And I'd like to find out a little bit more. So I'm going to bring Coach Jim on the show now. Welcome.
Thank you. Great to be with you, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yes. So tell me, where are you coming live from today?
So I'm in a suburb of Rochester, New York, where unfortunately it's been quite cold this spring, but today we got a day of sunshine and it's in the 60s, so it's even brightened my day because I often have to be the sunshine for many people in Rochester during this time of the year. So
You need one of those lights, right? For the like the people that live in Alaska that have that light that's sitting there. So I just want to remind everyone that the Art of Inspired Selling is a live interactive show. So if you have questions, comments, things that you want answered, please drop it in the chat. I'll welcome you on the platform. Marshall is here from Mexico. We want to give him a big shout out. He's a marketing consultant. He's on LinkedIn. He's all over the place. So welcome, Marshall. Thanks so much for coming to the show. So tell me, as a guest on The Art of Inspired Selling, I'd like to ask my guests, what is it that inspires you? You've been a coach for so long. You've been involved in children's lives for so long. What was that driving force in the past, and what's that driving force now that helps you get up and want to motivate the masses?
I think it starts with number one, that you have to have clarity of what you really love, what I call finding your passion. In one of my presentations, I talk about, discovering your passion is where I believe it starts. I know we're going to talk and delve into a little bit more deeply about personal mission, which was actually another important key that I share in my presentations. In getting clarity about it, I think we'll go through a little process here in a moment of why were you put on this earth? Because I get kidded because I'm known as an inspirational leader, here locally, and then certainly I kind of spread that around the world with some different things that I do. But like every day, question always people joke with me is, who motivates the motivator? Because I'm the motivator, right?
Right.
And
What about me? Right.
yes, so and what I really found is I think being clear about who you are, why you want to get up every morning, I think is very important. And I think the other thing is one of the other presentations I do is what I call the 10 questions all effective leaders should be able to answer. And one of the questions I ask is, do you have a personal growth plan? Because I think you have to be intentional about growth. It just doesn't happen by accident. I believe you either are growing or dying. Unfortunately,
Right.
I hope everybody's growing more than they're dying. But I'm intentional every day. I'm an avid reader. I read a book a week. I'm a huge podcast and audio program. When I do a walk every day, when I turn my car into a library on wheels, I'm always listening to different programs. So I'm always finding ways to inspire me so then that I can turn that around and inspire others.
Mm-hmm. And yes, to this, almost like teach the teacher, right?
Yep.
So we get that download, and then you turn around like, who's going to be the first person that I tell this to? Like I get that download, and then it ends up into, I throw up on social media a lot because
Right.
it's that inspiration, but you don't want to lose that moment. And you're like, man, if that inspired me and I could share that message to somebody back, right?
Yeah.
That's the reason that we're here. Some of us are here,
Right.
right? I feel
Right.
that's my calling in life as well. So, tell us about your career. Were you only a high school coach? Were you a teacher as well? Tell us a little bit about your backstory.
Yeah, so I was an educator both as a teacher and a coach. I taught physical education,
Mm-hmm.
mostly in the high school level, although I did some other levels early in my career. And I actually bounced around early in my career. I became a head basketball coach at a local school in my area at 25 years old, which is pretty young. And then I did such a fantastic job. I led that team to 17 consecutive losses, and then they ended up letting me go, and that was a very humbling experience. But we all have our struggles, and that ended up being probably one of the best professional experiences me because of two reasons. Number one, it woke me up and I realized that I had a lot to learn about leadership and building teams. I needed to learn a lot more, and that's when I really started my personal growth. And number two is I used that uh, issue and that difficulty or challenge that happened to me, that adversity, into a stepping stone that I was going to prove to myself and to the world that I could be a successful coach. And that burn never went away. I coached for 30 more years after that, and fortunately ended up having a lot of success. And then, as you mentioned, and I'll share just very briefly that in 2006, I had a young man that was my team manager. His name was Jason McElwain. The world now knows him as J Mac. And J Mac was a special young man to me, not because he was on the autism spectrum or was learning disabled, but the fact that he tried out for our team for 3 consecutive years, never made it, but was willing to serve as our team manager. And because of that, he inspired me so much that I decided to offer him a gift his senior year when he served as our team manager. And the gift was I was going to give him a uniform and hopefully get him into our final home game, which we call senior night.
Mm-hmm.
And I kid people that periodically he would ask me about that uniform. And of course, I define periodically as about every other day. He really was excited about that opportunity. And we had a very difficult season. I'm not going to delve into this too long of a story, but I did, as you mentioned, I wrote a book about it called The Coach
Mm-hmm.
and Miracle. Because ironically, that season, at the beginning of the season, was the most challenging season I ever had in my career. And then it ended up being the best part with what happened later on for two reasons, and I'll share those right now. Number one is I actually did end up getting Jason into our final home game with about 4 minutes to go. And when he came in the game, I'm usually a pretty macho guy. I normally don't cry at basketball games, especially
And
ones that I'm
I just want
coaching.
to let everybody know I dropped a link to that video, so you can watch the video that so you understand the background of the story. So
Yeah,
continue on.
thank you. So with just over 4 minutes to go, when I put him in, he got on the court, and he was so excited. And what I didn't know is one of our parents had made these pictures, these placards of Jason's face, and put them on paint sticks and gave them to our student body. They called themselves the Six Men. And when Jason entered the court for the first time, they put up these paint sticks and gave him a standing ovation. And I got so overwhelmed with emotion. I actually sat down, which I rarely did during games, and tears are flowing down my face. I'm so profoundly touched. Well, the game begins, and Jason, the first time we get the ball, Jason gets in the right corner. He lets go a 3-pointer. The crowd kind of stands in anticipation. It misses by like 6 feet. And I kid people that I know you're not supposed to pray in the public schools, but I was praying, dear God, please help him get one basket.
All right.
And the next possession, he missed a shot, but this time it hit the rim. So I was encouraged by that. I thought God was starting to listen here. And then the third time we had the ball, Jason got a shot from the right wing behind the 3-point arc. And this time it went in. Magic. The place exploded. And I thought to myself, God must be a basketball fan. Not only has Jason scored, he's got a 3-pointer. It can't get any better than this, right? Well, wrong. For the next 3 minutes, Jason turned into his boyhood idol, the late great Kobe Bryant. He just started making shot after shot. And the two things I'll never forget, with about a minute to go, I'm still sitting on the bench, tears still rolling down my face. I cannot believe what I'm witnessing. And I get a tap on my shoulder, and I'm shocked. I look behind me. It's J Mac's mother, and she is bawling her eyes out, and she whispers in my ear, Coach, this is the best gift you could have ever given my son. What would you guys have done? Of course, I cried harder.
Of
And then how the
course.
game ends.
Even the story
Jason,
brings a little tears to my eyes,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yes.
How the game ends is really out of a Hollywood ending. I mean, it was incredible. Spencerport, our opponent that night, I want to give kudos to their coach and their players. They were great sports. They score with about 10 seconds to go, and our player takes it out. Normally, he throws it to our point guard, but for whatever reason, he throws it to Jason. So I look up at the clock, and it's ticking down 6, 5, and I'm thinking they're just going to let him go, and he's going to go in and make a short shot. Oh no, he pulls up like 2 feet behind the 3-point arc, almost an NBA three. And I'm thinking, Jason, don't shoot for that. That's way too far. He launches his rainbow and swish. I look over, our student body runs on the floor, our players run on the floor. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm living the movie Rudy, but this is really happening.
Yes.
And then our players put him up on our shoulders. And at that point, I had no idea how many points he had scored. And our public address announcer comes on and says, the leading scorer for the Trojans tonight, J-Mac, with 20 points. So he literally scored 20 points in less than 4 minutes. So if you tabulate that mathematically, if you'd played the whole game, you scored 160, which is pretty good. And the uh, the great thing, there was so many life lessons, about share just two. One was that because we had a lot of strife during the season, I wasn't sure
Mm-hmm.
how the kids were going to respond. Yet in those last 4 minutes, out of their own hearts, I never asked them to pass the ball. Yet in those last 4 minutes, they passed the ball to Jason every time. In fact, I still kid Jason to this day. Jason, I'm still looking for your first assist. You never passed the ball once.
You didn't share. Yeah.
Yeah, but the great thing is it just showed the essence of teamwork, how much other players cared so deeply about Jason. And then the other thing is, I really, I feel like has been a ripple effect. I've seen some neat stories with
Mm-hmm.
young people that, have a disability or whatever. But I really felt they did it for all the right reasons. Didn't have any media there. In fact, my only responsibility is I had to call it in the local newspaper, and they didn't make much of a deal. They just mentioned very briefly in the article. I thought they would give Jason a headline. What I didn't know is the next day, Jason's speech pathologist, I didn't know him that well, but he came to the game because Jason told me he might get in, and he called one of our local TV stations, and they borrowed the video. And from there, within 3 or 4 days,
It
it
was
spread around the
crazy.
world, and it just was, and social media wasn't as big then, but there's a video ESPN did that's on YouTube that I think has over 1 million hits on it. It really was a very, very touching story. And then to make the culmination and end that story is we had never won the sectional championship, which is a pretty big deal in our area. And I had been a pretty successful point coach, but that was kind of my big stumbling block, the 4 minute mile barrier. And we went on 3 weeks later and won the championship in front of a sold out arena of 10,000 people, which it kind of added the cherry on top, which was pretty cool.
And it also those that team right now has this story that might have fueled other things to happen
Right.
along their life path, right?
Absolutely.
And so with that story, it's a beautiful success story. And there's probably I'm not going to say there's probably, I'm the mother of a special needs child who's on high performing, but I put him in sports to help with his therapy, to help learn how to engage with other people. And I didn't have such a good, successful coach story, right? He
Mm-hmm.
ended up getting kicked off the team because he didn't interact. I'm like, dude,
Yeah.
the whole point of him being on there is that he has Asperger's and he can't be touched. Like,
Right.
come on, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
have you done any? I know you're doing motivational speaking for corporations, but have you done any motivational speaking or helping with other coaches that might not have, they have that opportunity to make an impact, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And like in my situation, the guy failed, like flat
Mm-hmm.
failed.
Right.
But have you done some of that kind of
I
talk with
have
other
done
coaches?
some, probably not as much as I'd like to. But certainly right now the speaking industry's kind of been shut down. I mean, I've been doing virtual
Mm-hmm.
presentations, but I have definitely spoke at basketball clinics or conferences, and I've done some other speaking to other coaches. Actually, I would love to do more of that. Hopefully when things open back up, because I have a couple coaches here locally that I still mentor on the side,
Mm-hmm.
just to try to help them in developing all the things that I learned over the many years as a coach.
Yeah, I think there's a need for that, especially in the volunteer organizations. There's so
Mm-hmm.
many sports. You know, this hockey situation, it's not a paid gig,
Right,
right?
right,
These are professionals or fathers that are just giving back to these kids. And
right.
there's a need. There's a need for education and understanding about how to interact and how to treat each child with the same grace that you would, that their parents might, or something. I don't know. I don't want to get into
Right.
it. So, but what I do want to get into is talking about a personal mission statement.
Sure,
So, tell me your beliefs on a personal mission statement before we actually get into it. I have
sure.
my little paper out so
Yeah.
I can take
Okay.
notes. Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah. So, when I was kind of floundering early in my career, as I mentioned, I lost my first varsity job. I started then my personal growth, and I started to become a much more avid reader. And I was still taking it. I was getting a little better, but I was still struggling a little bit. And what happened is I actually read Dr. Covey's book, The Seven Habits, and
Mm-hmm.
I've read it and listened to it. In fact, I had the blessing to actually speak for Franklin Covey number of years ago. But in that, he talked about, in his seven habits, one of them is to begin with the end in mind. And he talked about the importance of personal mission statement. And at that point, I wasn't clear on why I was put on this earth. And so it really stimulated my thinking. And it wasn't something I developed, within minutes of reading that book. But what I really did is really started to think about, and we can go through a little. Do you want me to start a little bit of the process
Sure,
of
sure.
how I did? So the first thing I did is that I
I'll
really
take notes
started.
and put it in the chat as well as you
Yeah,
talk.
so I really started with answering this question: why was I put on this earth? And for me, because I am a person of faith, so I added, why did God put me on this earth? But certainly the question is applicable for everybody, whether you're someone that believes in God or not. And so that was where I started. Then, in taking through the little process that I take, people through, is the next thing is decide on what are your most important values. And I usually start with three, but I think values can only be from 3 to 5 to 7. I don't think you should go more than 7. So for me, when I really started to answer that question, I wanted to respect all people. So respect
Mm-hmm.
is a very important value to me. Number two is that I wanted to serve others. So I wanted to find ways to consistently serve others. The third one for me was constant improvement. I wanted to continue to improve myself and improve others by learn what I learned to be able to share, like we talked a little bit about. And then kind of overseeing that, the umbrella of that is I wanted to live every day with integrity. So that was kind of my umbrella with integrity, the top of it, where everything I do, I wanted to do with integrity. So were my most important values. So when I started to think about that, then the next thing is that I really believe with a mission statement that you need to take time to think. I meditate every day, but whatever it takes, just to because I don't think we do enough of that. We're just sit quietly and think. And for my case, it was answering that question: why was I put on this earth? And what I did also is I put it on the top of a sheet of paper, and I just started to jot notes. Why that? Why
Mm-hmm.
that? And just keep doing it. And then I started to discover what I did. And then the other important thing in finalizing for me was the fact that I believe, to have a powerful mission statement, it's got to be involved with something, whether you're serving others or you're serving a cause. Okay. So, it could be like, you might want to help the environment. Might be an animal lover. So I'm not opposed that you could be serving something besides people, although they probably always goes back to serving people in a way.
People.
Um, but
It, well,
so,
it also goes with when we're talking about building a personal brand, and I encourage people to understand what you stand for
right.
and what you stand against. And when you understand what you stand for, in that statement, you can find an organization or a person or some cause that you want to include in your value. So,
Absolutely. You're 100% right. And I think that's so important. So when I got clarity, and I highly recommend to people, as you answer these and go through these steps, is then to start writing down. And I think it should be pretty crystal clear where you can, very much, I've seen some personal mission statements with a page long. I personally think that's a little bit, I think you can add things and that kind of thing, and things may evolve. But my clarity of my personal mission is to be an outstanding role model that makes a positive difference in the world by
mhm.
helping others make their dreams come true. And what helped me immensely as a leader is exactly what you just mentioned. And that was, it really gave me clarity of what I stood for. And because I was a leader as a coach for many, many years, my players and my students were very clear about what I stood for too. I was not wishy-washy with that. I was
Mhm.
very clear that I was going to live these values and this was my purpose. And I would share that when I developed that. This is what I am all about. And it helped me immensely and first of all, because I think as a leader, the first person you got to lead is yourself. And if you don't do a good job leading yourself, it's hard to lead others. And so that's where I really started. And that helped me immensely become a better leader of me, which certainly led to becoming a much better leader of other people.
Well, in that, when you're describing what you stand for, what you believe in, and what you can, um, you through clarity builds confidence, and
Yes.
you also understand what you then begin to say no to, and what
Right.
you can lean into and say yes to. Right.
Right.
And that's where the clarity comes, where you can get deeper into your passions and stop the squirrel chasing and the shiny
Right.
object syndrome,
Yeah.
because those things might be important, but then when you stop and you think, like, is that truly my value?
Right.
Am I going to go chase stray dogs when my value is over here in supporting children and creating, changing lives? It's clarity, it's
Right.
confidence, it's focus.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
Those.
And so, you guys, I want to let you know, one of the things I also do with my clients is I don't recreate this wheel. So Franklin Covey has this beautiful mission statement builder that you can use. I drop the link in the chat. They have personal, family, team, and your values. You can, after you do that, they'll email it to you. You can take that document, you can massage it, you can make it your own, you can redo it. And then I would suggest putting that up on your bulletin board. It would support you so that you can always refer back to, wait, what did I say?
Right.
Am I
Right.
living that?
Yeah,
So,
because
yeah.
I think what you just said, Catherine, is so hugely important because, as I've worked with, various leaders of teams and businesses, when we get into personal mission is having clarity because I think it does then gain confidence of the
Mm-hmm.
person you want to become. Because the other thing, that I when I took over basketball programs, I was kind of known as a turnaround specialist because after my first failure, I took over 3 programs that had been losing, and we were fortunate with our staff to turn them around and do quite well. And what the other part of that is, I know most businesses, schools, teams, they a lot of them have a mission, but what I find is a lot of people really don't know what it is
Mm-hmm.
and they're not living it. So it's the same thing going back to your own personal mission. I'm far from perfect. I've screwed up before, don't get me wrong. But then I always go back to that foundation and say, wow, if this is what I'm all about, am I living this
Mm-hmm.
consistently? I'll give you a little quick story. As a basketball coach, it was real important that we always acted with class. And one of our rules was we would wear ties when we went to a road game. And but I was not a big fan of ties myself. So I didn't always wear a tie in the road. And I had a parent approach me after one of the games and said, Coach, why do you insist that your players wear a tie and you don't wear a tie? And I went back to my personal mission, be an outstanding role model. Hey, I failed. I slipped, and after that, Coach Johnson wore a tie for every road game for the rest of my career because that person was absolutely right. And again, going back, if that's your mission, you got to live it every day.
Right. Right. And it's okay to redirect,
Yes,
right?
yes,
And sometimes
absolutely,
we need our audience or the people around us to help point that out. And
absolutely.
it's wonderful. We talked about, do you have a personal mission statement, and your why? Why do you need one? And we just
Hmm.
talked about that. What was the next point that you wanted to cover? It was how, right? Why were
Right.
you put on this earth? That's number
Okay.
one. And I dropped that in the chat. You guys, let's hear from you if this is valuable information. We have Thali from India. She's watching on YouTube. Um, she's a excellent woman in sales. She's actually working on launching a women in sales program for the women of India,
Wow.
because, as you know, some cultures still feel that women should stay at home and take care of the family, and the earnings are on different levels. And she's blazing a trail over in India to help create awareness for women that there's a career for them in sales, and she's doing great work. So thanks so much for joining us today, Tila. Sorry. Okay, so, why were you put on this earth? What is most important to me? Let me to get that in the chat here.
Hmm. While you're bringing that up, it's interesting because I'm working on a second book for young and emerging leaders. And ironically, when you
Hmm.
brought up India, my co-author is a college professor here locally, but she's actually originally from Bangladesh, and she's actually over there right now. So we've been doing a lot of Zoom calls. But yeah, it really and she talks a lot about that. There's still women I know in Bangladesh. They're just starting to make some of those changes. So
And it will take time, and
yeah,
it
yeah,
will take time, but I'm helping, and I'm dedicated to that cause, and that's what I stand for. I stand for
absolutely.
lifting women up, women in sales, making sure that you understand that there's other women out there to support you, and as we like to say, as you put a hand up, you also put a hand down, and help others. um, so I just put what is most important to me. And then the third thing when building your personal mission statement is, how do I want to consistently act?
Right. And as you
Right?
mentioned before, I think we need to emphasize is the fact that once you put it in writing, it's so important that you put it up somewhere. You're very clear about it, and then are you living it, consistently? I think that's so important.
Yes. Yes. What legacy, this is a really good one. And I bet this is one that you're now thinking about too, is what legacy do I want to leave now and after I'm gone? Why don't you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, that's an interesting one because I think a lot of times as you go through life, you don't think about that. And I think that's okay. I think it's really important because one of the things I ask people about is how can you do a living legacy, what you're doing right now. I mean, it's nice to be known, after you pass away, but, I think we all should be cognizant of what can we do now
Mm-hmm.
to create good things for other people that would possibly create an issue or a legacy for yourself. So for me, I mean, I certainly have a legacy to a certain degree in coaching because I did it for a long time, and unfortunately, I was able to have quite a bit of success. And as we mentioned, I was part of a story that exploded all over the world. In fact, I mentioned to you a little bit before, but I never coached an NBA player. I coached some very good players, but actually that changed about 2.5 months ago. I had a young man that played in what they call the G League, which is the minor league for the NBA. And he got called up to the Houston Rockets, and I was a proud papa. 2 weeks ago, I actually flew to Texas and got a chance to see him play twice, and got a chance to have brunch with him. And one of my brothers lives in Texas, so I got a chance to spend some time with him as well. So it was a really, really neat experience. And really a special thing to see one of your players, actually all his labor, create
Yes.
an opportunity where he plays in the highest league in the world. So that was really cool.
What did
But
he say to you? I mean, how did you had feelings of pride, right?
mm-hmm.
And what did he say to you? Did he was is he living in that moment? Is he focused on the work that has to be done? Tell us a little bit about his mindset.
Well, it reminded me because J Mac, the story I told everybody about,
Mm-hmm.
actually came back and helped me as a volunteer assistant for my last 9 years. So he actually was on the coaching staff when Anthony Lamb, the young man that's now playing in the NBA, played for us. And I think Anthony just learned a lot of things about from the J Mac story, and the fact that Anthony had great resilience. To give you a very quick background, in eighth grade he was a big kid, but too big. He was heavy. He was probably 6'2", 250 pounds as an eighth grader. So he was really big. And in ninth grade, he had lost a little bit of weight, but he was still overweight. And I brought him up to the varsity because he was a talented player, but he wasn't in very good shape. And I remember challenging him after the season. I said, Anthony, you really got some tools to be special in the game of basketball. but you got to decide that you're going to get disciplined and get yourself in better shape. And boy, did he take that to another level. He came back his sophomore year, a new kid. He lost like 25 pounds. And he went from a part-time player as a ninth grader to one of the best players in our area, and made what they call all Greater Rochester, was the top 15, which is a very hard thing to make as a
Mm-hmm.
sophomore in high school. And then he ended up being the player of the year for 2 consecutive years. But then he had a kind of a setback, and because of the basketball world, he was 6'6", which is, to the normal person, that's a big guy, right? But in college, because he of his body type, where he's 6'6" and he's like 225, so he's a big kid. He was kind of what they call a tweener in the basketball world, where is he a guard, is he a forward? And he was kind of more of a forward in high school, but when you go to the big time in Division I, or possibly even the pros, you got to be bigger than that. But Anthony didn't. He went to the University of Vermont, which is a Division I school. They have a good
Mm-hmm.
program, but they're not. They're called what they call a mid-major. They're not the high level that you see the Dukes and the North Carolinas and that kind of thing. Uh, so he was kind of overlooked by those bigger schools. Well, he went on. He had a great career there. He was their conference player of the year 2 years in a row. And then, he got another setback. He thought he was going to get drafted in the NBA. He didn't. He got into a camp and he got cut. So he had to go to the G League. He went to the G League. He actually, the first G League team he played for, he didn't play much for. So he's, tough. But he got traded to the Rockets G League team, and there they gave him a opportunity, and he took advantage. I call it carpe diem, being ready. And Anthony had that never give up mindset, very dissimilar to J-Mac, that he was
Mm-hmm.
going to continue to work and find a way. And his passion was, I was going to be the best I can be. I was also going to be a great teammate, which is really important. And now he
Yes, it is
plays for the
important.
Houston Rockets, which is, and in fact, the 2 games I saw him play, he did not play a lot. Ironically, the next game after I went out of town, or went back home, I should say, he got in and played a lot more, and he actually scored his career high. He had 22 points, and since then he's actually started a couple games,
Oh,
which is
wonderful.
which is amazing.
Congratulations. Let's
So
give him
this,
some kudos, right?
yeah, so the story, it continues, and hopefully, he can stay in the league. But the one thing that I've just observed, from my own studies and just the young people that I've been around, is that, the dreams can really come true. I don't want to deceive people and say that, every dream you're going to have is going to come true. But I do believe all of us can do a lot more than we think we can. I mean, I think of, some of the things that I've been able to experience in life, not my wildest dreams, that I'm going to be sitting in Oprah's show. I mean, it just, that was not something that I could ever see feasible, that I could actually write a book. Another thing, I'm working on another book, so I just really encourage people, starting with that personal mission and getting clarity, but then, dream big, and then you got to devise ideas, and constantly growing on how you can get a little better each day, and how you can find different ways to serve people, which is something, Catherine, you're doing great, with what you're doing. And
Thank you.
then, good things are going to happen to you. I really believe that.
Well, also, what I have found, one of my sayings is, if you're going to dream, dream big. It takes just
Yeah.
as much energy, right?
Right.
If you might as well make it big, and a big
Yeah.
one. But at times when one of the mindset hacks that I have is that if at some point I feel low, or something happens and the cards aren't falling right, I go back not to a victim mentality. I go back into a servant mentality.
Mhm.
Like, I know that in this place that I am today is still some place where I can serve others, and in that servant mindset, in that giving back, I fill my cup back up with gratitude, right? The
Mhm.
gratitude that somebody gave me the time to be able to impact their lives. It was the gift that they gave me while
Yes.
I was giving to them. And it just having that inspired feeling to go to then now turn back and go, okay, you know,
Right.
I got my groove back on. It was temporary setback, not too much. So I just, encouraging everybody to resilience is something that I strive for. I've been told
Mhm.
that I'm resilient, but that's one of my tricks for being resilient is that I don't curl up in a ball and I cry. I
Right.
look for some place where I may be low, but there could be somebody else that's lower.
Right.
What can I
Yeah.
do to lift them up?
That's a great point because I heard a little thought the other day because I'm a junkie for listening to podcasts, and this comment was really powerful. It said, instead of compare to others,
Mm-hmm.
find ways to share to others. I thought, wow, that's powerful because it's a lot what you just said. Instead
Yes.
of finding out because whoever is doing this well, but really always go back to how can I serve others and help others, because when you keep that mindset, I think the world reciprocates in your favor. So
Yeah, the gifts come. You
yep,
wait for them.
yep,
I'm not here for the gifts, but they're going
yep,
to come eventually.
right.
All right, so we're just going to about to wrap the show. I think I've covered. Let's see. We talked about steps to creating a personal mission statement. We answered the questions above. We write out our top 3 values. Let me just type those in the chat. Anybody have any last questions for Coach Jim before we let him go? Why don't you tell me what's on the horizon for you? Like what you need, great speaking gigs. How can people get in touch with you? How are you monetizing right now? What's going on? And I'll be typing while you talk.
Yeah, so I have converted to virtual. I was slower than many people because I love live events, so that's something I'm really looking to get back to. So right now, some of the things I do, and first of all, to contact me. I think you said you're going to put in the show notes. I'd be glad to
Mm-hmm.
share my personal email, which you're going to put in the show notes, which is jjhoops at rochester.rr.com. We have a lot of information on our website, coachjimjohnson.com. I have a free monthly newsletter and a free weekly blog that I do every week. You can follow me on social media. Every morning, I have a success thought that I share on some of my platforms, such as LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter, and a little bit with Instagram. I also do a leadership thought every day. I also have a YouTube channel that you can check out where I do a lot of inspirational videos and that kind of thing. And certainly the JMac story is always a nice thing to check out. And I do presentations on these 3 things. Really, I'm inspirational. So I have one where we talk about dreams coming true, where we
Mm-hmm.
talk about perseverance. I have one about leadership where I talk about my 7 keys to be an effective leader. And I have another one on teamwork where we talk about how to build a great team. And that's where I focus in. I do have a couple workshops. We just spend a lot of time with our players on goal setting. So we spend a lot of time with that. Uh, and I also have a workshop that I do for leadership and helping that. And I have a couple other things, but right now I'm amping up for getting back out in the world as we start to open up with live. I'm still doing some virtual events. As I said, I'm working on a second book for young and emerging leaders. And lastly, I'm also I partner with my co-author and another fine young man. We're going to do a tri-generational podcast that we're going to start within another month, where we're going to focus on trying to help young and emerging leaders. So that's kind of what I've got. It's a lot of fun and a lot of time and effort, but I'm again trying to find ways that I can help and serve as many people as I can.
Yes, and I appreciate you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom, giving your story. This live stream will be sitting on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Twitch. So I know there's some young kids out there that are going to watch that. Let's hear the Twitch people out there. So thank you so much for sharing your story. Thank you for being here. Your contact information is now in the show notes. And I just wish you the best of luck in everything you do. Keep touching lives. Oh, you know what? I had a thought. What is JMac doing? What is
Uh,
he doing today?
Well, JMac is he came back for my last 9 years in coaching, and
Mm-hmm.
he helped as a volunteer. It used to be funny because I'd go, I travel on the road, and people would say, "Do you ever see him anymore?" And I say, "See him. I see him almost every single day." And when I don't see him, he's either texting me, calling me, or whatever. Our relationship is still strong. In fact, I'm having breakfast with him on Saturday. It's been a little bit tricky with COVID. Has stayed involved. He's actually, I'll inspire everybody with a quick story. He uh, while he was helping me, he came in the office one day because basketball he loved, but he was also a runner in high school. And he comes in the office one day and he says, "Coach, I love coaching. I'm so thankful that you allowed me to help you." And I said, "Well, thanks, Jason. It's great to have you." He goes, "But I miss being competitive myself. I'm going to get back into running." And I said, "Really?" He says, "Yes, I'm going to start running marathons," which he had never done. And I said, "Yeah, so what's your thoughts?" He goes, "Well, I'm going to run the Rochester Marathon." And I said, "Well, because going back to what you and I both believe, dream big." I said, "Well,
Mhm.
Jason, what's your goal for the marathon?" He says, "Coach, I want to qualify for the Boston Marathon." And I said, "Well, what's your time?" And for people that are listening, they may not, but the qualifying time for his age group for the Boston Marathon was 3 hours and 5 minutes. Now, if you don't have a background in running, you won't appreciate that. But I can tell you, because I was a runner, 3 hours and 5 minutes for a marathon is really running
That's
fast.
a
You've got to
fast,
be
yeah.
really
I,
in shape.
I
Okay.
did the New York in 4.5 or something,
Okay,
or
so
yeah.
that gives you
So
perspective. So you
yeah,
can
I have
appreciate that
perspective.
3 hours and 5 minutes. So here's what happens. He runs the Rochester Marathon. He actually runs it in 3 hours and 2 minutes. He qualifies. And I was so excited. Here's the crazy part. He decided he wasn't ready for Boston. He didn't go. Well, that next year when he could have gone was the year of the bombing. So isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
So he goes back. He runs the Rochester Marathon again, and he runs 3:01 this time. So he qualifies again. This time he's going. So he says, "Jason, you know what? What's your goal for the Boston Marathon?" He says, "Coach, I'm going to break 3 hours." I said, "Jason, Boston Marathon is a much tougher course than Rochester." He goes, "I know. I've upgraded my training." First Boston Marathon. He runs it in 3 hours, or excuse me, 2 hours and 58 minutes and 46 seconds. He breaks
Wow.
3 hours. And since then, he's run like 14 or 15 marathons. He's run Boston, I think, 3 times. But again, it just goes to show you when you put your mind to something and come up with a plan and stay with it, and great things are going to happen to you. And Jason's obviously a great illustration of that.
He is, and we wish tell him we all say hi.
I will
Um,
do.
yeah, and that with that story, I just can't top that. So thank you so much. Stay on the platform. I wish everybody a wonderful weekend. Join me next week for the Art of Inspired Selling, and we'll be back. Have a great time today, and I appreciate everybody's comments.